Hello, my fellow Extraordinary Americans. I'm Samaddar, and this is Extraordinary America. What is Extraordinary America about? You see, American identity is about freedom, the opportunity for a better life, and the pursuit of happiness. However, most Americans are not free when it comes to the financial front. Most Americans are suffering from financial slavery due to loss of jobs, stagnant wages, inflation, and debt of all kinds. Wealth and income inequality runs rampant across America, and the middle class is all but disappeared. So what is Extraordinary America about? Extraordinary America is about the abolition of financial slavery. It is about the financial freedom of the 99%. It is about the nation of immigrants and descendants of immigrants awakening and unleashing the extraordinary within themselves and setting themselves free. The path to financial freedom is through entrepreneurship and investing on the light side. It is about financial education, not only when it comes to money in the monetary systems, but also in regards to how to start a business, investing, especially when it comes to precious metals and real estate. In this podcast, I interview guests, many of whom came from humble beginnings, to see how they did it and how they attained financial freedom in their own lives and how they did business. And it is my hope that you will be inspired and you will want to awaken extraordinary within yourselves and realize the American dream. Once again, welcome to Extraordinary America. Welcome back to the show, my fellow extraordinary Americans. For today's guest, we have Alicia Butler Pierre. Alicia is the founder and CEO of Equilibria Inc. Her career in operations began over 25 years ago while working in various chemical plants and oil refineries. She invented the Casenu framework for business infrastructure and authored Behind the Facade: How to Structure Company Operations for Sustainable Success. She's the producer of the weekly Top 2% Business Infrastructure podcast with a global audience across 70 plus countries. Alicia is also an adjunct instructor of Lean Principles at Purdue University and serves as the USA chair of the G100's Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises. The Process Excellence Network recognized her as a top 50 thought leader in operational excellence. A chemical engineer turned entrepreneur, she's designed and optimized processes for small businesses, large enterprises, nonprofits, and government organizations alike. Alicia has been seen and heard on business, radio, CBS 46, Minitab, BronxNet, Podcast Movement, The Coaching Show, and Founders of Color. Alicia is what I would call an extraordinary American, and I'm glad and honored to have her on this show. Alicia, are you there?
I am here, Cosmos. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it.
Alicia, thank you so much for taking the time to do this podcast with me. I really appreciate it too. So, Alicia, can you tell me and the audience a little bit more about yourself, your background, and how you got started?
Oh gosh, let me go through a very short version of that. I am, as you mentioned, I have a business and I've been in business now for 19 years, which is hard to believe because I literally remember day one. The way I came to start my business is I was working as an engineer. I know you have an engineering background as well.
Yes, I
So you
do.
can probably relate to some of the things I'm about to say. But it didn't take me very long, Cosmos, I was working in different chemical plants, oil refineries. It didn't take me long to realize, one, that I did not want to spend the rest of my career in that kind of a working environment. But two, I also realized I didn't understand business. I did not understand the business decisions, the marketplace, and how things that were taking place in the marketplace dictated our production schedules on a day-to-day basis, for example. I knew the technical aspect, I knew the engineering work that I was doing, but I had no appreciation for the business behind the company that I was the different companies that I worked at. And so I decided to go back to business school, pursue an MBA. So I was working full time during the day as an engineer, going to school late at night. And once I completed my studies, again, I knew I didn't want to do engineering for the rest of my life, but I thought I could maybe have a job where I could transition out of engineering, still do something that was very analytical, somewhat technical, but also blended in with some new business skills that I had just acquired. So I relocated from New Orleans, Louisiana to Atlanta, Georgia. And Cosmos, I just knew that one of these companies that are headquartered here would pick me up. You know, Delta Airlines, we have Coca-Cola, we have UPS, we have the Chick-fil-A, all of those companies are headquartered here, and nobody wanted me. Nobody wanted me. And so I decided after about 2 months of what seemed to be soulless job searching, you know what? Go ahead and create an opportunity for yourself. And it just so happened, I love that you have a spiritual aspect to your show. It just so happened that everything that I was reading, every documentary I was watching around the time that this was happening, all seemed to have one thing in common. And that thing was the fact that we are all blessed with natural skills, talents, and abilities. And through our quote unquote educational system, all we're really being taught to do is how to be very good employees working for someone else. We're
Yeah.
not taught to take those natural skills, talents, and abilities and turn them into opportunities where we can sustain ourselves, our families, and our local communities. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to start a business around a skill that I have. I'm very good at organizing things. So here I was, this chemical engineer who said she was starting a professional organizing business. People thought I was absolutely insane. But over the years, Cosmos, it has shifted or evolved, I should say, from professional organizing to business infrastructure. So not just going into companies and tidying up, right? Making things look nice and organized, but literally rolling up our sleeves, figuring out what are the processes that need to be documented? How can we work more efficiently? How can we help you figure out how to do more with the same resources that you already have? What job descriptions do you need to have in place so that as your company starts to grow and you need to actually scale, you can start to attract the right people onto your team? So that's what we do now. I absolutely love it. It is a lot of work being an entrepreneur, but to me, that is really what the American dream is about, is being able to take those natural skills, talents, and abilities. And we are blessed and fortunate enough to be in a country where we can shape and mold our natural skills, talents, and abilities into a business that we can actually not just make money off of, but actually be profitable as well.
Alicia, that is amazing. And I wanted to add that yes, I did graduate as like an engineer, and I originally came from like a country in the Middle East, right, where they had all oil refineries, and the main industry was the oil industry. So through a certain extent, I can relate. And I knew when I was doing my engineering degree, I did not want to do this for the rest of my life. Like I thought, like, why are we doing this? And then I realize that a lot of people's destinies are linked to like the need to make money and because they have an employee mindset. And if they knew what their skills were, as you mentioned, and they knew how to monetize it, then they can go wherever they want, whenever they want. They will have time and financial freedom. But Alicia, the problem is, and the reason why I started this podcast is because a lot of people don't know how to monetize their skills and their natural talents and how to organize it into a process and systematize it and have like business infrastructure. So for the sake of the audience, can you elaborate a little bit more about like what revelations you had around monetizing like the skills that they have? That if a person had to do it.
First of all, it all started with a Google search, believe it or not, Cosmos, because I will never forget this. I remember going through that period of introspection, I remember literally being on my computer late one night. I go to Google and I type in professional organizing company or something along those lines. And I was shocked to discover that there was an actual professional membership, an organization called NAPO, the National Association of Professional Organizers, Who knew? And I joined that organization. I signed up for a membership right away. And that is how it started for me, understanding that particular business. I had no idea that even existed. It literally was curiosity that led me to type in a few keywords into a search engine. And I mean, I was blown away by what those search results yielded. So I would say to anyone who is watching us right now, to anyone who is just listening to us right now, it all starts with having curiosity. Be curious and go into some search engine, whether you like Google or DuckDuckGo or Firefox, whatever it is that you like to use. Type in those words, and you too might also be amazed at what you will find. When it came to actually starting a business, I did have one advantage that maybe others won't have. I had just finished my MBA, Cosmos. So,
Mhm.
with my MBA studies, I actually had a concentration in entrepreneurship. So, I fundamentally knew what it took to start a business. So, I should give that disclaimer. But for those who don't know, a great resource to go to is the SBA, sba.gov. That's the Small Business Administration. You can search for anything. Literally, you can search for how do I start a business? And then once you're clear on the type of business that you want to have, then you have to determine, well, what is the best legal structure for my company? Will it be a sole proprietorship? Will it be an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp, all those kinds of things? The business infrastructure piece of it, I would encourage people who are again listening and watching, listening to us and or watching us, give your business a go for a while. Sometimes it can take between 2 to 3 years before you really figure out what it is that you're offering, whether it's tangible goods or services, or maybe a combination of the two. Because the people that we work with, that we've found that business infrastructure works best for, are those who've been at it. They've been at it for at least 2 to 3 years. They understand who their customers are, and they don't have a problem of not, their problem is not attracting customers. Their problem is that they usually have too many customers, which is a different type of problem. And that's when they recognize, oh my gosh, we have to grow our team. I can't do it. I literally cannot do everything by myself anymore. It's just not going to work. Either that or the business will implode. That's the point at which we usually come in and say, okay, let's put some infrastructure around the things that you've already done, that you know work, that you know is successful. Let's build that stable foundation so that you can continue to not just grow, but actually scale to that next level as well.
So, Alicia, this is one question that I wanted to ask you, right? Since it's something that actually like was in my mind when I was doing my college degree. So I was like in engineering, and I had like these bunch of ideas, and then and the reason I'm asking this because a lot of people in our audience are Gen Y and Gen Z, and they basically are probably going to college, but they probably have ideas, but they also want to finish their degree. But like if let's say you're let's say doing like an engineering degree or like some other degree like that, and you have all these ideas and you want to start a business around it, but now you're thinking, how do I go about this? How do I manage my time, or how do I get my financing to back it up? Or like what is the process, step by step process I got to go about from where I am right now to making this an actual reality? How would you advise somebody to go about doing that?
So if you are still in college and you have this idea, you have to figure out, is it something that you can actually do while you're still in school? That's the first thing you have to be realistic about. So you have this idea, but can you, if you were to start a business around that idea, would you be able to actually service your customers? And this is this is why we know the famous dropouts, right? Like Bill Gates and Zuckerberg, people like that, right? They started off with these ideas and then they realize, oh my gosh, I love this idea so much. I'm going to just assume all risk. I'm going to give up school altogether and I'm going to pursue this idea full time. Um, that is a personal choice, I will say. But if you, I think the more important thing is when you are passionate about something, one of those ideas, or maybe all of your ideas, and you know for sure that there is a market for it, go for it. Okay. I highly encourage anyone who is starting a business in the United States. There is an organization called the SBDC, which stands for Small Business Development Center. They are funded by the SBA. There are over, I think, like 2,000 of them across America. So whatever state you're in, if for listeners who are actually in the continental US, just go to SBDC and you can do a search for your specific state and you will see these different offices, these different locations that are within your state. Here's the beauty about the SBDC, Cosmos. They will assign you a business consultant that will help you for free. This is where part of our tax dollars that are funding the SBA, and then the SBA in turn funds these different SBDCs. It is to their benefit to help you be successful, right? Because the more successful you are as their client, so to speak, then the more funding they can then in turn get from the SBA. So that's how that works, right? They are actually the consultants that you work with are actually paid by the SBDC vis-a-vis the SBA, but we have the benefit, we being, American citizens, we have the benefit of receiving their services for free. They are great at helping you come up with a business plan around your idea. They're very good at helping you vet that idea. Could you really make money off of this? Is there really a market? So even if you don't have a strong business background or even a strong business education, I highly recommend that as a beginning step, just to start understanding how to put together a business plan. What do financial statements look like? There's the cash flow statement, there's your balance sheet, there's your profit and loss statement. Becoming accustomed, learning those different things about business, about running a successful business, but also getting into the habit of working with consultants and having someone who is not emotionally tied or vested into your idea give you that third party objective view of your idea. Because when it's our idea, it's like our babies and we don't want anyone to tell us our baby is ugly or that our baby won't work, right?
No, I mean, in business, you have to be emotionally non-attached if you want to make things work.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And they're great at pointing you, even if they are unable to answer some of your specific questions, or if in the course of them helping you, they run into a snag, they have such a large and expansive network that they can definitely pair you up with someone who can help you with a particular area.
That is amazing, Alicia. Like a lot of people like don't know that there's so many resources like this out there. Like usually like the path of business and entrepreneurship can feel so isolating because the most people around the person that's starting a business like they don't have like they're of the employee mindset. Like they don't understand that you have to monetize something like that. But Alicia, one of the questions I had was what was the greatest lesson you had during these 19 years you were in the business world? Like what is the greatest lesson or revelation you had regarding business and people doing business in general?
One of the greatest lessons is the importance of listening. And I know that sounds so
I'm listening.
simplistic, It's so simple,
I'm listening, Alicia.
but listening to what your customers tell you they want. Oftentimes when we go into business, we think we know what they want.
Mhm.
Or we might say, well, they need this. So and so needs this. Cosmos needs this for his podcast. Cosmos needs this for whatever. But is that what Cosmos wants? See, when what a customer wants versus what you think they need are in alignment, then that's a beautiful thing. But oftentimes, I always like to, are you familiar with the story of Kleenex? Like, you know, I have a book and it's actually called Made in America. And it's a profile, very colorful book about all of these different American products. But what's so interesting when you read this book, a good, I would say maybe 25 to 35% of the products that are featured were intended, their original intent or purpose is not the way they are used today.
Mhm.
Um, for example, like the Q-tip. I think people or Kleenex, excuse me, is the better example. So a Kleenex is supposed to be a disposable handkerchief, but they started realizing people are actually using it to remove makeup or you know, it's all of these things. So again, oftentimes we go into something thinking or intending for it to be used one way, but our clients or our customers say, "Yeah, we know that's what you're saying, but this is how we want to use it." And so oftentimes businesses can fail because they aren't paying attention to what their market is telling them they want. Think about my company. We started off providing professional organizing services. There was an entire market that we were missing out on, which was small business owners that were not home based.
Uh,
And they were saying, "Hey, well, hey, what about us?" And in my own ignorance, because remember, I came from an engineering background where everything was very methodical, things were organized, all I's were dotted, all T's were crossed. That's what engineers do. But I didn't have an appreciation, Cosmos, for the fact that, oh, you mean businesses can be disorganized? I mean, that's how naive I was, right?
yeah.
Because I didn't come from disorganized workplaces, work environments. So I truly didn't know that, oh man, you know, there are a lot of people who work in very chaotic environments.
Yeah.
And so had I just kind of stuck to my original plan, like, nope, nope, we're doing professional organizing services. We will continue to go into people's basements, their garages, their closets, their home offices, and we will organize, like physically organize things, and that's it. That's all we're doing. I would have missed out on a completely different market, one that is much, much larger and way more lucrative than the
Mhm.
professional organizing market that I was playing in a very small sandbox, not realizing there was a much, much bigger portion of the pie that we could be nibbling on.
So Alicia, this works really. This is actually pretty important for the audience to know because in the earlier you mentioned like how a lot of people can look at their business idea like it's their baby and then they're very attached to it. But a lot of times you have to adapt to what your market truly wants. And you're absolutely right. A lot of businesses fail because they fail to adapt because they're too emotionally attached to their original idea because that's what they think that the audience or like the market wants. But the market is always right. The customer is always right. And as the people that are aspiring to start new businesses, if you want to attain financial freedom, you have to know what your customer wants. So it's something that I wanted to like elaborate upon, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Alicia, what do you think, in your opinion, is the greatest challenge that, other than this factor, that new aspiring entrepreneurs have while starting their business, and how could they go about overcoming it from your perspective?
Well, if we're talking about starting a business, capital. That is always, always the challenge for, and I don't care what industry you're starting in, you need money. You need money. And if you're just starting, it can be difficult to get that money because you don't have a track record. And if you are not in a technology is all the rage right now, if you are not in the digital technology space, it's even more difficult to get funding. Let's say you have an idea for a landscaping business. Will you have much luck getting money from more than likely you might be seeking traditional sources of financing compared to someone who has a revolutionary new app to help you with landscaping. Which do you think is going to get funded, right? So that's the challenge when you're, I would say a major challenge when you're starting. But even as you are growing your business, here comes the need for capital again. A lot of times your existing money could be tied up into other things. You have to grow your team, but in order to grow your team, you need access to more money. You might have the track record that's needed at that time, at that point. You have proof of concept because you've been in business a number of years, but it can still be difficult to get your hands on the money that you need. That's why I'm so grateful that so many of these fintech companies are on the scene now because they are making capital even more accessible to people who otherwise would have never been able to. Forget starting there. It's one thing to start it, but then you have to continue to grow your business and hopefully one day even scale it so that you can exit your business.
Yeah,
So yeah, capital. I think at every stage of a business, capital almost always, the lack of capital almost always rears its ugly head.
so Alicia, whenever people think of capital, entertaining capital, they always think of Shark Tank. That's the first thing that comes to their mind. And so like for somebody that's new to business and entrepreneurship, like how would you advise them to go about getting capital? Like should they just pitch their vision or should they come up with a meticulous business plan in addition to that when they're dealing with like an angel investor or if they wanted to go VC? Like in your opinion, like how should they go about doing it if let's say they never done this before?
Educate yourself on the different types of funding and financing that are out there. Leverage these free online platforms that have all kinds of courses that you can take about that. I was going to say LinkedIn Learning, but LinkedIn Learning is not free. But there's Udemy, there's Thinkific, there's all of these online portals, educational portals, where if the courses aren't free, they're relatively inexpensive. Relatively inexpensive meaning you can probably take a course for maybe under 50 US dollars, where you can educate yourself about the different types of funding and financing. And if you don't want to take an actual online course, go get a book. There's several books out there that talk about it. One is a book that I did a lot of the diagrams for, and his name is Charles H. Green.
Mhm.
Read any book by him. This is a person that I know who actually owned his own bank at one time, but he worked with the SBA for many, 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 many years. And his specialty is in small business financing. So he talks about things like crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, venture capital, angel investments. What do all of those things mean? What's the differences between all of them? What are the similarities? What are the pros and cons of each? There's traditional bank financing. There's loans from friends and family. Do you There's grants that you can apply for, government grants that oftentimes people aren't aware of. So educate yourself about all of the different sources of financing that are out there. Some are easier and quicker to get to than others. But certainly depending on the type of industry that you're in, for example, with grants, I know if you were somehow in the education space, for example, there are all types of grants for small businesses that are out there. There's even competitions that you can, submit your business for. And if your company wins, you might win a, I don't know, $10,000 grant or something like that. Money that you don't have to pay back is always a good thing.
No, totally.
Yeah. So,
No, Alicia, this is important because people need to know how to go about getting capital because one of the greatest issues when it comes to like a new business is risk management when it comes to money and like raising capital to like for the initial few months.
mhm. And
So
I just thought of another tool that is extremely helpful just for vetting your idea. So before you even go asking for money, before you even invest more time in developing a carefully crafted business plan, and I'm no fan of large business plans at all, but there's a tool called the Lean Canvas. It's a
interesting.
one-page document, and I highly recommend that as a tool for vetting your ideas. I actually went through that exercise with my good friend. Her name is Martina Goss. She's in Ireland, and she specializes in this. She literally will help you vet your idea. And then if it passes the test, then you go on to securing the funding and writing the business plan and actually getting started and all of those things. But it is such a rigorous exercise to test the validity of your idea in the first place.
Thank you so much, Alessia, for mentioning all these resources. And I wanted to ask a question when it came to like the American dream, right? And so I know like I know personally know that entrepreneurship and business is so important for attaining the American dream and attaining the American identity of freedom. But from your perspective, what is your perspective on like on the path of entrepreneurship and business when it comes to achieving the goals of freedom and the dream?
There is nothing, there is no greater feeling, from, in my opinion, than to be your own boss. Small businesses make up the backbone of the American economy. They make up the backbone of many economies around the world, actually. But yet we always hear about the big guys. We hear about Yahoo and Google and Apple and Uber and all of the big banks. But the truth of the matter is small businesses usually, the definition is as defined by the SBA. These are companies that usually have less than 500 employees. Now, there's different classifications for small businesses, but for the most part, that is what classifies a small business here in the US. And we make up over 90% of the American economy. Think
Wow.
about that. Think about that. It's not the big guys that you hear about on the news all the time. It's us. It's the entrepreneurs. So we very much have a stake in what goes on in our country because policy shapes the way we function as small businesses. It absolutely does. It is part of the American dream, in my opinion, because you are literally in a position as an entrepreneur to take your ideas, build a business, whether you are purchasing a franchise, whether you bought, invested into a business in a box kind of a thing, or you are truly starting something from scratch. The beauty is you have the liberty and the freedom to do that. There are places in this world where you cannot do that. You can have so many great ideas, but for whatever reason, whether you're in a communist country or whatever, you can't do it. Or if you do it, the government is going to take like 90. I remember being in Cuba, I think, and I spoke to many entrepreneurs there. They were like, yeah, they take like 80 to 90% of what we make. Can you imagine? But here we're in a country, we are fortunate enough to be able, through our own grit and determination, to say, you know what, I'm going to put my stake in the ground. I believe in me, Even if no one else around me believes in me, I believe in me. I was given this idea for a reason because it won't go away. It keeps me up at night, literally. I can't seem to turn it off. I'm going to go for it. And I might not make it. I might fail, but at least I can say I tried, right? And
Yeah.
if it doesn't work, there are a million other ideas that I have that I can look into, right? And you just keep going. There is nothing more, I can't think of a better definition of freedom than that, is to be able to say, I'm going to do this. It's legal. Make sure that what you're doing is legal.
Of course.
No dark web kind of stuff here, right? Um, but 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 seriously, we have the space and the place to be able to make decisions like that. Don't take that for granted. I've been in many, many, many countries. And whenever I'm here, listen, America is not perfect by any stretch of the. I looked at your website, which is beautiful, by the way,
Thank you.
and it is not perfect. However, when you start going around the world in different countries, it becomes really clear really fast what we have here that isn't in these other countries, right? So this idea of freedom of speech, this idea that we have the liberty to be able to start a business, and as long as we are, abiding by the rules of the IRS and other, we have the freedom to run and operate our businesses the way we see fit. Of course, there are legal parameters and there's regulatory agencies that we have to adhere to, but the bottom line is we have, if we want to make that decision, we can. Even with education, I mean, you know this. There are many countries where if students don't pass or make a certain have a certain percentage on a test, you don't get to go to high school or the
Yeah.
equivalent of high school, or you college and university is definitely out of the question. But it's not like that here in the US. Even
Yeah.
if you are, let's say, a CD student in high school, you might still be able to go to a community college. You may not, you won't get into Yale or Harvard or Stanford, but you still have that option to pursue higher education. Whereas in other countries, that's it. That there is no possibility. So again, it's not perfect. It's not, but there are many things that we have at our disposal that I think we oftentimes take for granted. I would encourage anyone who is listening, watching right now, get your passport. Get a passport. Most Americans do not have a passport.
I found that out. Yes.
Stay with me here. I think it's what, like only 20%. It's a low percentage. It's embarrassingly low. Most Americans don't have a passport. Get a passport. Start going to other places. Because it's when you start going to other places that you will start to appreciate what you have. Okay? Because I have been in the homes of people. I was telling a friend the other day, one of the most hospitable experiences I ever had in my life was in Luxor, Egypt. It was during Ramadan, and a family literally took us off the street. We're wandering around aimlessly looking for food, and this family took us in. It was a group of like eight of us, eight strangers. They took us in, prepared this meal that was from scratch, that was out of this world. But they didn't even have a roof on their house. There was no roof. It was just exposed to the elements. So this is what I mean by, yes, we think we know poverty, right? Here in the US. It's not like poverty in some other countries, right? So again, America is not perfect, but I think when you start to get out and about, and there's some beautiful things, there's some great things in other countries too that we don't have here in America. But I think it just helps put a lot more things into context, and it helps you appreciate what you do have.
No, Alicia, I couldn't agree more. Like, I'm an immigrant myself, and I came from two other cultures. And I've also visited Egypt, by the way. It's a beautiful place, and I know what you're talking about. And I am actually amazed by the opportunities that are put over here. In spite of its flaws, it's still one of the best places in the world to start to attain whatever dream you want, provided you work hard and you work smart, you know? And I couldn't agree more. So I do suggest that people, the Americans, do travel across the world and see what they have. And so what you're saying is spot on because yeah, I've been there as an immigrant. I came from outside, and that's what makes me appreciate this place.
Yes, exactly.
So, Alicia, can you tell me the audience a little bit more about the premise of how you founded Equilibria Inc. and a little bit more of what it's about?
Sure. So it started off again as a professional organizing company back in 2005. We're in 2024 now. Again, it's so hard to believe because the time has gone by so quickly. But we actually offer business infrastructure for fast growing small businesses. However, we also work with larger companies, many government agencies as well. What is business infrastructure? Business infrastructure, Cosmos, is simply a system for linking the people, the processes, and all of the tools and technologies that are needed to make your business operate on a day-to-day basis. How do you link all of those things together so that it forms one cohesive foundation for you to continue to grow and also scale? It provides a level of organization and structure that may not exist in your company today. Some of the outputs of the framework that we use for creating business infrastructure, just to give you all a sense of, well, what is it? It sounds very abstract. We, through just simple tools. I know AI right now is all the rage and so many other technologies, but we actually use a lot of analog tools, things like stick figures and index cards. And just from those two simple tools, we're able to help people figure out all of the different tasks and activities that they have to perform in their businesses. How are those activities actually grouped or organized into departments? And then beyond that, who are the ideal people that should perform those different activities? Just from that exercise alone, which we love doing it in person, it can be done remotely, but there's nothing like doing it in person. But just from that activity that I described, we help them figure out the job descriptions of the people that they need to hire to add to their team. We also help them figure out what their company's organizational chart looks like. In other words, who's reporting to whom, what roles will you outsource to independent contractors versus you might want to have an intern here, or you may have a part-time employee versus a full-time employee based on your budget. We also help you figure out your records management systems. So how are you actually organizing your digital information, whether you're using Google Drive or Notion or Monday.com or Dropbox? How are you actually organizing the information that your team needs access to? And then a big part of it is the process piece. When
Mhm.
you hire other people, they need to know what to do and how to do that work. We're
Totally.
not communicating telepathically, right? And so what happens with so many small businesses, and I shouldn't just say that it's small businesses only, because this happens with companies of any size. We can get into a nasty habit of hiring people and just expecting them to hit the ground running. And it does not work that way. There has to be some level of training. There has to be some documentation. The more documentation, obviously, the better, because that documentation is really like your insurance policy. It's saying, Cosmos, I've documented here in this beautiful standard operating procedure or this process flow chart of some sort. This is how you will collect money from our clients. And that gives me a way of assessing your performance. So if I find that, oh my goodness, we have like 15 clients that are late paying us, what happened, Cosmos? And if you say, well, Alicia, you didn't tell me what to do, you didn't show me, you don't have anything documented, then I could get mad at you, but I would be so wrong for being mad at you, right? Because
Yeah.
I didn't do my job to actually train you and make sure that things were documented so that when I'm not around, you can actually go back and refer to that documentation and not have to wait on me to give you an answer or to guide you. And then the final element of the business infrastructure is figuring out how to, and this is kind of an ode to the days of professional organizing, but how do you actually structure and organize your physical workspace? How do you make sure that things
Yeah.
aren't a mess, things aren't chaotic? Because it does transfer over to the way your client's experience in working with you, your customer's experience. So that's really what Equilibria is. That is what we do. We go in, we help people figure out, their business infrastructure. We take what you already have in place, and we just find a way to bring all of that together into a cohesive foundation that you can again build upon and not just grow, but actually scale.
Alicia, I would definitely recommend anyone to listening to this to check out this company and what it does, because this is actually applicable to business, you know? And and Alicia, I know you also wrote a book called Behind the Facade. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about that?
Sure. I wrote my book back in 2018. And the reason it's called Behind the Facade is because there's usually this kind of a battle, if you will, between marketing and operations. So many people spend time promoting their businesses and they're on social media, they're doing branding, publicity, and writing articles, and all of those things matter. Don't get me wrong, because people must know that your business exists. But
Totally.
what happens, Cosmos, when you've done such a great job on the marketing and sales side of things that now you have all of these customers and they're like, Cosmos, hello, I've been waiting on my order. You said I would have it like in 2 weeks. It's been 2 months. What's
Yeah.
going on? Right. So it's making the argument for don't just make your business look good on the outside, make sure that it can operate just as well on the inside. And that's where the operations takes place. Operations is and that business infrastructure are the things that your customers don't see, but they experience it, right? Your customers don't know the hot mess that's going on that's preventing you from getting their order to them on time. They just know that they've experienced frustration and possibly anger because they didn't get their order on time. Um, so that's what the book is about. It actually spells out a framework for creating your business infrastructure. It truly is a how to book, but it's told in the form of stories. So there's these different characters. Each chapter includes the story of a different character who is undergoing a fast growth problem. So there's a little something in there, I believe, for everyone, no matter the stage of business that you're in. I had a lot of fun writing it, and I'm thankful for you for bringing it up. Hopefully, folks will go and check it out.
No, I definitely would recommend them to read this book, you know, because it is relevant. Like you have to have both the ins and outs taken into aspect. And Alicia, how can our audience connect with you and get to know more about you and your work and everything that you do?
The best way to connect with me is, I would say, on LinkedIn. So you can find me, Alicia Butler Pierre. That's Alicia Butler. And then Pierre is P like Peter, Ierre. You can also go to my company's website, which is EQB Systems. That's with an S at the end.com. So a lot of people have trouble spelling equilibria. So that's why it's eqbsystems.com. That's the best way to find out what we have going on.
Alicia, that is amazing. And Alicia, I am so happy that you took the time to do this podcast with me and like share your knowledge about business with the audience because this is relevant resources that they can use to help jumpstart their own business, especially the understanding of SBA and all these resources that are out there to help them with all of this. And I do hope that you take the time to come back to this podcast at a later date, you know?
I would love to. That would be great.
Thank you, Alicia. And I want to end this episode by letting my fellow extraordinary Americans know that, hey, look, there's an extraordinary within each and every one of us, and it's our duty to awaken it and unleash it. Until next time, bye for now. Hey there, everyone. Thank you for watching Extraordinary America. If you like what you see, please do subscribe to our podcast and share it with others. Remember that the best investment that you can make in your lifetime is in your own financial education, for it is knowledge that truly sets you free. Also, remember that your purchasing power is being diluted through inflation, and then the practical thing to do is to protect the loss of your purchasing power by investing in precious metals or the right cryptocurrencies. Also, never forget that you are an extraordinary American. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.